Welcome to National Eyes. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates tonight. In a decision that will echo through the halls of power for years to come, the Supreme Court has delivered a stunning blow to the Trump administration, overturning the global tariff plan that defined his second term, and upending the economic strategy that had become a cornerstone of his presidency. The decision dismantles a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream, sending shockwaves through financial markets, and raising urgent questions about the very authority a president has to act unilaterally on the world stage. This was more than a fight over tariffs. It was a test of the separation of powers, a battle that pitted the executive branch's emergency authority against the constitutional limits set by the nation's founders. For months, legal scholars and lawmakers have debated whether the president's sweeping use of emergency powers could withstand judicial scrutiny. President Trump warned that a loss would destroy the nation. He painted a dire picture of economic collapse and weakened global standing if his authority was curbed. Now the aftermath is chaotic, with U.S. businesses facing massive refunds, global partners reassessing trade deals, and uncertainty rippling through every sector of the economy. The ruling redraws the boundaries of presidential authority, making it clear that even in times of crisis, the executive branch cannot bypass the checks and balances that define American democracy. It sets a powerful precedent that will constrain future administrations, ensuring that no president can wield economic power unchecked. The story began with Trump's aggressive use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a law designed for rare and extraordinary threats, not for reshaping global trade. He imposed tariffs on allies and adversaries alike, sparking trade wars and legal challenges that quickly escalated to the nation's highest court. As legal opposition grew, today's historic rebuke from the Supreme Court has thrown everything into question, from the future of American trade policy to the limits of presidential power. The chaos Trump warned of has arrived, but not in the way he predicted. Instead, it comes as a constitutional check on his power, a reminder that no leader is above the law. Tonight, many are calling it a victory for the rule of law, a reaffirmation that the Constitution remains the ultimate safeguard of American democracy. The path to today's Supreme Court ruling began years ago, when President Trump made sweeping use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This decades-old law, originally designed to give presidents tools to respond to genuine national security threats, became the centerpiece of a bold and controversial strategy. The Trump administration invoked IEEPA to justify imposing global tariffs, arguing that emergencies like unfair trade practices and the fentanyl crisis posed urgent threats to the nation. This move allowed the White House to bypass Congress and act unilaterally, reshaping U.S. economic policy with the stroke of a pen. Critics from both parties quickly sounded the alarm, calling this a dangerous overreach of executive authority. They argued that Trump was twisting a law meant for true national security emergencies into a tool for economic and political gain, setting a precedent that could be abused by future presidents. Legal scholars and historians pointed out that IEEPA had rarely been used in such a sweeping fashion before, and warned that unchecked executive power could undermine the constitutional balance. Lawsuits quickly followed, with challengers arguing that the president's power under IEEPA was not meant to be limitless. They questioned whether the law truly allowed the executive branch to sidestep Congress on major economic decisions. In the summer of 2025, key federal courts ruled that Trump's use of IEEPA to impose tariffs was unconstitutional. However, they delayed enforcement of their decisions, giving the administration time to appeal and setting the stage for a dramatic legal battle. As the legal fight intensified, Trump's team warned of economic catastrophe if the tariffs were struck down, arguing that reversing course would harm American workers and businesses. The stakes grew higher with each passing week. The Supreme Court was now faced with a momentous question. Should it endorse a massive expansion of executive power, or restore the traditional balance between the branches of government? The nation watched as the justices weighed the future of presidential authority. Today, after months of legal wrangling and public debate, the answer was clear. The Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Roberts, issued a decisive 6-3 ruling Trump's use of IEEPA for global tariffs is unconstitutional. The majority opinion declared that while the president has foreign affairs authority, it cannot override Congress's role in setting economic policy. Pro-business conservatives joined liberals, signaling this was about constitutional structure, not partisanship. The dissent warned the decision would hamstring future presidents, but the majority focused on the separation of powers. The ruling instantly invalidates over 80% of tariffs imposed during Trump's second term. The administrative machinery behind the tariffs is now in rapid chaotic shutdown. The court's order is immediately enforceable. Tariff collection must cease today. A pillar of U.S. economic policy has vanished overnight. The economic fallout is immediate. A massive revenue stream, once as high as $400 billion a year, has suddenly vanished from the government's balance sheet. The ports are quieter, shipping containers sit idle, and the Treasury faces a gaping hole in its finances. This abrupt loss doesn't just impact government programs, it ripples through every sector of the economy, from manufacturing to agriculture, leaving uncertainty in its wake. Now the government is on the hook for up to $150 billion in refunds to U.S. businesses. For bureaucrats, it's a logistical nightmare, mountains of paperwork, endless claims, and a race against time to process payments. But for thousands of struggling companies, these refunds are a desperately needed lifeline, offering a brief respite from financial ruin and the hope of survival in a suddenly unstable market. The legal foundation for major international deals, like the EU's $600 billion and Japan's $550 billion investment pledges, has collapsed overnight. These agreements, painstakingly negotiated over months, are now in jeopardy, leaving diplomats scrambling to salvage what they can and casting doubt on America's reliability as a trading partner. Foreign partners may walk away, erasing nearly $1 trillion in planned investment. Boardrooms across the globe are filled with frustration and confusion as deals are canceled, projects are shelved, and years of planning are thrown into disarray. Global markets are rattled, stock tickers plunge, analysts scramble to make sense of the chaos, and corporations worldwide are forced to reassess their strategies. The uncertainty sends shockwaves through financial centers from New York to Tokyo. The administration's trade strategy, built on the powerful authority of IEEPA, is now in tatters. Policy files are closed, and the White House scrambles to find alternatives as its most effective tool is stripped away. President Trump is left with only slower, weaker tools, sector-specific tariffs that lack the sweeping impact of his original global plan. Industries like steel and agriculture brace for a new era of uncertainty, knowing these measures can't fill the void. The shock is real, and the uncertainty is spreading. Business leaders, investors, and workers alike are left wondering what comes next. As headlines warn of instability and the future of American trade hangs in the balance, the United States must now confront the far-reaching consequences of a trade regime undone overnight, facing a storm of economic, political, and diplomatic challenges that will shape its future for years to come. For American businesses, the ruling brings relief and uncertainty. Companies relying on global supply chains celebrate the end of punishing tariffs and the promise of $150 billion in refunds. But those who adapted to the tariff environment now face disruptive change, and domestic producers may see renewed foreign competition. The impact will reach consumers. Tariffs acted as a hidden tax, raising prices on everything from electronics to groceries. With tariffs gone, prices should fall, easing inflation and boosting purchasing power. Yet communities that hoped tariffs would revive local manufacturing may feel betrayed. The ruling exposes deep divisions between global trade's winners and those left behind. This decision is a defining moment in the battle over presidential power. The court drew a clear line. Congress, not the president, sets economic and trade policy. The ruling is part of a broader pushback against Trump's expansive use of executive authority. It signals the court's reluctance to grant unchecked power to the executive, even in the name of national security. Future presidents will face greater scrutiny if they try to use emergency powers for broad policy goals. For Trump, it's a personal and political defeat. His governing style, built on executive muscle, has been rebuked by a court he helped shape. The limits of presidential power have been fundamentally redefined. Legal scholars hail the ruling as a victory for the rule of law, restoring Congress's constitutional authority. Economists see short-term chaos, but predict long-term benefits, lower prices, more stable supply chains, and a return to predictable trade. The $150 billion in refunds could act as a major economic stimulus. Not everyone is celebrating. Some national security experts warn the ruling weakens the presidency's ability to respond to global threats. Critics fear the court has removed a vital tool for confronting unfair trade practices and imposing sanctions. Politically, Trump faces a dilemma: accept defeat or seek new, legally sound ways to pursue his agenda. The decision energizes both his opponents and his base, deepening polarization. The political landscape is set for even greater turbulence. The White House reacted with fury. Trump condemned the ruling and accused the justices, even his own appointees, of betrayal. He warned of economic collapse and claimed the court handed victory to foreign adversaries. Politically cornered, Trump must choose: work with Congress for new tariffs, or seek executive actions likely to face more legal challenges. On Capitol Hill, Democrats and some Republicans praise the court, while Trump's allies decry judicial activism. The ruling deepens partisan divides and makes bipartisan trade policy nearly impossible. Trump will use the decision to rally his base, framing it as a battle for America's soul. Judicial power, executive authority, and economic nationalism will dominate the coming political fight. With the tariff regime gone, the nation faces the challenge of transition. The executive branch must halt tariff collection and process billions in refunds, an enormous logistical task. The focus now shifts to repairing trade relationships strained by years of confrontation. There's a chance for renewed diplomacy with allies and a return to stable, rules-based trade. Congress must reclaim its constitutional role, crafting thoughtful trade laws and providing real oversight. The era of broad, unchecked executive power in trade is over. The Supreme Court has reaffirmed that no one, not even the president, is above the Constitution. The choices made now will determine if this crisis becomes a catalyst for renewal.